Hey, Mike, what do Kelly Slater and PT have in common?
I don't know. They're both world champs?
Nope, they both own Endless Summer box set.
Oh my God, rad. You guys, you can get it too. The link's in the show notes. Welcome back, everybody, to the QuiverCast. This is Mike, your host. Let's roll. Hello, everybody. This is Mike here with the QuiverCast. And I am super stoked. I got a special guest from, I think, Sydney, right, Bob?
Yeah, Sydney. That's where I'm from.
Bob Bain, a former pro surfer from back in the day, and still rips, by the way, on his Instagram. You can see it. He's killing it still. We have Bob Bain. How are you, Bob?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Mike. Happy to be here, mate. It looks, from what I can see on this little screen here, it looks sunny over there in California.
Yeah, it's kind of been overcast all day, but the sun's broken out. So, right on. So, Bob, where are you living at now in Australia?
I live in a little town which is in Sydney. It's one of the outer suburbs of Sydney. It's called Avalon. So,
Oh, cool.
I grew up in Manly, but about 26 years ago, I migrated a little bit more north to a little town called Avalon, and that's where I've pretty much raised my family, and I've been there the whole time in the one house.
Okay. So, you've been all over the world surfing. Why'd you pick that town?
It's got a couple of good little left-handers, if I'm honest. It's like way back, even when I was living down in Manly, which I love Manly. It's where I was born and bred, and
Yeah, hometown.
kind of where I got onto the world tour and started surfing. We can go into that backstory for sure, but
Yeah.
I always found myself going up north to Whale Beach, Avalon area, just because there's like good left-handers there. It always packs a bit of a punch. It's kind of pretty consistent beach for a surfer, where it works on all different swells, and it's a good crew there. So yeah, I just felt, I don't know, I was just drawn to it.
Well, let's start at the beginning. How did you learn to surf, or why did you even want to surf?
I was the child of what they called 10-pound poms in Australia. So my mum and dad emigrated from England and Scotland, and basically they were paying people 10 pounds to get on a long boat trip up from the UK and Scotland and so forth and make their way down to settle in Australia. So they landed in Australia, and straight away they had my sister. My mum travelled. She was pregnant with my sister, and then they had me 2 years later.
Okay.
They settled into a little flat that we nicknamed Cockroach Castle. It was basically, there was a bunch of families that lived on every floor, and we had a shared bathroom. It was infested with cockroaches, but the beautiful part about it was right on the beachfront. So out my window I could see the ocean. And if I'm honest, the beauty was my mum and dad had the ability to take me across when I was really young, but my dad wasn't very well, and he drank a lot, and it was it was a I wouldn't say a rough upbringing. I mean, they really loved me, but my dad, he had some issues from the war, I think, and he struggled a bit. So I always found that I'd take myself to the ocean from the time I was just a little toddler, a young kid. My mum would watch me cross the street, and I'd go across and I'd play in the ocean, and it became my medicine. It became my escape. It became my playground, and and all the other things that it led to as we went down the line. But yeah, that's where I learned to surf.
Okay.
Firstly, on a little plastic zippy board that had little handles on the side.
Okay.
The older Australians would know what I'm talking about. It was just a little pop-out belly board, and then I progressed to a Coolite after that, and then there was a local board shaper, Jack Knight, used to shape. He was part of Manly Pacific with Batty Trelaw, and Midget and all those guys used to come down, and I used to steal the boards from his backyard and take them out and surf on them. So that's kind of where it started for me.
Okay. So you're first generation Australian then?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So how were you treated by the other Australians, being kind of immigrant, really?
Well, I was born here, so I didn't travel out on the boat. So
your parents, I mean.
Yeah, I was considered an Aussie.
Okay.
There's a lot of Poms here. So if you think about Australia, it's not a big population, and it's actually not a very long history either.
Yeah, no.
It's they came in not so long ago, caused a lot of carnage, basically invaded the country, and here we are. So I'm a byproduct of those 10-pound poms. And interesting enough, I'm married to an Indigenous lady.
Oh, cool.
So my kids are Indigenous, which is beautiful,
Yeah.
But yeah, I was always considered an Aussie, I suppose, because I was born right there in Manly Hospital, and
Okay.
yeah, I've always been close to the Aussie culture, obviously.
Right on. The ocean's your medicine and you're surfing and stuff. At what age are you starting to progress?
I think. Sorry, I said I try not to say that word, but it was probably about 8 or 10 years of age that I found that I could surf quite good.
Oh, really?
And
cool.
Yeah, I never competed though. I just felt like I had a natural ability to do it. I mean, I started when I was like 3, and I didn't actually start competing until I was about 18.
Wow.
I had a period of time where from about 12 through to about 14 that I was right into skateboarding. Skateboarding was a big part of my life, and I got quite good at skateboarding. So interestingly enough, the other night we had the Jerry Lopez movie here.
Yeah.
Stacey Peralta was out here.
Oh, cool.
And when I was a kid, I got to skate with Stacey when I was 13. And we didn't see each other for 47 years, and I ran into him the other night. So that was a really cool moment. So I spent, probably a few early years there being a pretty core skateboarder. But skating back then was really, it was an extension of surfing. So you were looking for embankments, walls, pools, hedges, Larry Bertleman cutbacks off the driveway, all of that stuff. So really it wasn't separate to surfing like it kind of is now. It was like an extension of surfing.
Yeah.
So I did that for a few years, and then into my teens, got back into surfing big time and started competing. I was 18 when I started competing. It was quite late.
When you were skating exclusively?
No, I was doing a bit of both.
Yeah,
I was probably skating more than I was surfing, but yeah, again, the skating was probably an extension of surfing for me.
Who were you getting your ideas from skating? Was it the California kids, like, the Peraltas and the Alvas and all those guys? Or
Absolutely, because the year I did it was 75, 76.
Okay.
And we had the skate craze hit Australia, probably similar time that was all happening in the US.
Yeah.
So when the skate craze hit here, everyone dived in, the whole country.
Mm.
And what happened was we had a trial not far away from where I live where you could go and try out for this Coca-Cola skateboard team, as they called it.
Okay.
So I went along to these trials and I put on a bit of a routine, and I couldn't believe it. I made my way into the team. And
oh, rad.
There was about 6 of us that got onto the team, and one of the other guys on the team was Shane Horan.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't know Shane until we were in the team together, and I had no idea what a phenomenal surfer he was either.
Okay.
Because I didn't compete. I just, I bummed around with my mates when I was young, and we rode skaties. I was just a kid. I was 13 years of age.
Yeah.
I ran the streets and I skated and I surfed, and I had no idea who Shane was. And then I joined this team. I got the opportunity to see Shane surf, and I could not believe how good the guy was. He was just incredible. So we skated together, and look, it's quite a long, twisted story, this skateboard one, but the guy that ran the team ended up being a pedophile. And yeah, it was gnarly. And so during that year, my dad got very sick. He got cancer. And I was just in my first year of high school. I was super excited about being in the skate team. We're doing like tours around the country and magazines and all of this stuff. Yeah, basically my dad was really unwell. It was a really hard time because I was young, but I was quite street smart because I always ran the streets a fair bit when I was a kid, just because of my home life. And basically, I knew the guy running the team wasn't right, and I knew he was going to make a move on me, and it was all happening. It was starting to set up that way, and I was smart enough to go, I've got to get out of here. It doesn't seem right. I quit the team, and around the same time, my dad died. So it was, on one hand, an amazing time. I got to meet Stacey Peralta and I got to skate all these places, but in another way it was heartbreaking. And I got out, I was smart enough to get out, and I really had a hatred for this guy because I could not believe, in the years to come when I got older, realizing that someone was making a move on someone in such a vulnerable position. But I gather that's how it works. And So anyway, my dad passed away. I kind of went off the rails a little bit for a few years. Started drinking pretty young, started fighting a lot. And I guess that experience shaped me towards the person I was going to become. Like I was always a happy kid, but I think I had this thing on my shoulder that I was angry because I felt a little ripped off, my dad dying. And I just think that there was a side to me that became very competitive, very hard. But the other side was always happy-go-lucky. So it was a bit of a yin and yang, if you will.
Yeah. That's a heavy
little bit
story.
of that. So anyway, that was a kind of bit of a deep dive into that timing. But that set me on a path. I still surfed, but I ran pretty wild. I left school early, started working in factories, partied, drank, smoked, fought, surfed, skated. Just, probably a lot of young, wild kids are doing. And that's where I was until I got to a point at about 18 where some of the local board riders talked me into joining the club and to compete with them. That's pretty much where it started for me, competitive surfing. So I didn't have early competition. There was no family support. There was nothing. It was just I basically fell into it. And I could tell you about that if you'd like to.
Okay, yeah, I do. But real quick, going backwards, you didn't surf contests and stuff because you were living your life. Probably, I'm guessing you were just probably not too much at home. There was, that's a heavy story.
I just make them away.
You were just surviving,
just trying to figure it out. My mum was great.
Okay.
She always looked after me. She wasn't a career woman. She had a simple job. So she struggled with me and my sister to, single mum, trying to get by. It was tough. It was really tough for her, but she was really good to me. But, again, you're a teenager, you fight with your mum, you're out, you're living on someone's floor, you're living in someone's shed. You move out, you do what you do. And then it was good and bad. It was we had some wild fun times, but it was also it was sad at times as well.
Wow. Didn't expect any of that. That's heavy.
No, that's the thing. I dived in pretty deep there, but that's okay.
Good.
I'm good with it. It kind of all leads to a place,
Okay. All right. So if there's nothing else about that, that's rad that you skated. That's rad that you met Peralta way back in the day. That's so awesome. And then, are you and Shane friends still?
Yeah, you know what? We're rivals. Like we are.
Okay.
We nearly came to fisticuffs back in those days. Like he was, like any aspiring pro surfer who's like at the time he was one of the best young guys in the world. He had a fair ego on him.
You and Shane being competitive skaters was he being competitive when he was skaters too?
Well, we were on the same team, but we never really probably physically competed against each other, but we're just competitive in that team. Like, obviously Shane had a competitive instinct. He wanted to be the best. I was, a bit of a rat bag kid. Well, I kind of like dynamite exploding together,
Yep. So at this point, though, what's going on in his life. You're seeing him on TV, and you're working in a factory, right?
Yeah.
So he probably forgot all about you. He didn't. Were you guys staying in touch or anything at this point, or you were living your life? Okay. And then you show up on tour, and we'll get into that later, I guess. But that's interesting.
I obviously had some baggage because I left that team with my dad dying at the time. And the guy who ran the team he's a nasty piece of work. So I had this really bad feeling about that.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I'd watched Shane. I just could not believe how talented he was. Just incredibly talented guy.
All around.
Yeah.
So now you're not serving contests either, and then you go into the board riders at what age? 18?
Yeah, about 18. Queenscliff Board Riders Club, it was called QBC.
All right.
It was the northern end of Manly Beach. We had about 3 clubs on the one beach, all fiercely sort of territorial of their little bit of sand.
And they seen
pretty
you
stupid.
And they're seeing you ripping, and they're like, "Is everyone trying to recruit you, or just those guys?"
No, it's just a couple of the older guys. They were like, "Hey, do you want to? What do you think? We've seen you surfing. We think you surf pretty good.
Yeah.
do you want to join the club? And I was like, well, I don't know if I want to join the club. And well, you guys are always hassling me in the water. And anyway, they talked me into it. I went into B grade, the lower grades, and I think I did pretty well, made the final. And I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. And started to meet other guys in the club. We started to party together, and it just sort of happened, And from there, I went into the regional titles, which was a stepping stone to go to the state titles, to go to the Aussie titles. And that's sort of how the journey used to happen for a lot of Australian surfers: board riders clubs, regional events, Aussie titles, and then pro-ams, that sort of thing.
But a lot of the kids were probably younger when they started than you, I would guess.
Yeah. It was, definitely a lot of the good kids, the ones that were making it, they were already well and truly on their way.
Yeah. So you kind of showed up late to the game, kind of.
Yeah, I turned up real late. To the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now are you beating these guys? These kids that were kind of prodigies probably?
I started to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I didn't have a car license. I had no car. I had to rely on friends to try and give me lifts to these events. Sleep wherever you can. I mean, a lot of people did it similar. Like you didn't have much money. You were sort of barely scraping 2 bobs together, and it's just the way it was. So I basically figured, and I still got sort of this approach to this day, that if you're okay, like if you're a pretty good surfer and you can back yourself in, someone on that Sunday afternoon is going to be stepping onto the dia. Someone's going to be getting that winner's check.
Yeah.
Why the fuck can't it be me? Like that's why does it have to be him? Why can't it be me? So I think that attitude stems back to the bit of working class, a bit of battling a bit as a kid, and just like, no, well, shit, I'm good enough. Maybe it's just a bit of that tall poppy. You want to tear him down. You want to, I kind of realized that was a little bit of my escape from my situation as well.
Mm-hmm.
That, I was working in a factory, and I figured that if I could make something of catching 3 waves to the beach, that's kind of what I call it in the 80s. That's what you had to do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
If I could catch 3 good waves to the beach and wiggle myself to a victory, heat in, heat out, I'd have the chance of maybe getting away from that factory, and kind of that's how it panned out. That's pretty much how it worked out in 1983 or 84, I should say.
So it was kind of initially there was no dream, and then it became a dream. I mean, something along those lines.
Absolutely, yeah. I had no inkling, and then really the one thing that probably sealed it for me was in 1983. I made my way through to the Aussie titles. In the end of 1983, I qualified for the Australian team to go to the 1984 World Titles in USA, in California. And it was the same time as the Olympics were on in LA.
Oh,
so anyway, I figured that if I could make that team, if I could get to the top 5 guys in that Aussie titles, the Australian government was going to pay my way to go to America, and I'd be on the Australian team.
Yeah.
I had 2 of my friends were about to do a trip around Australia in what they call a bongo van.
Mm-hmm.
It's an old van, and they did it up, and they said to me, look, do you want to come? I said, I'd love to come, but I'm in these Aussie titles, and if I make the titles, I get to go to America.
Yeah.
How good's that? Never been anywhere. So I said, all right, if you bomb out, you can jump in with us. And I thought if I do well, I keep going. So pretty much what happened was Kong was in that. Gary Elkerton was in that.
Yeah, cool.
Aussie titles, and Dave McCauley, Damien Hardman, Mark Sainsbury, who's passed away, unfortunately. There was a bunch of guys, Tony Ray. Anyway, Simon Law. But I made the top 5, and I got in that Australian team. And pretty much when I made the team and I was about to fly to America, I walked into my factory job and I quit.
Wow.
And I went off to California and did terribly in the world titles, just had a shocker.
Mm-hmm.
But stayed in California and couch surfed, went to Mexico, met the Parmenter brothers, who are epic for me, epic.
Okay.
Yeah, and then went in the OP trials at Huntington and won the trials and made the main event. So that was the baller got rolling from that point. So that point when I made the Aussie team was the time I went, hey, shit, maybe I can make something of this.
When you make the team, all the other Australians on the team, were they like, who's this guy? Were they familiar with you at that point?
No, I think because I hadn't done a lot of competitions, we were getting to know each other sort of for the first time.
Okay.
I think, Gary Elkerton was definitely the star of the team. Like,
100%. Yeah,
he was already a known entity.
Yeah.
He was Kong, he had the one black glove, and he was the man, and wow, I've never seen surfing like that. We surfed the Aussie finals at Perfect Kira, Perfect Cabarita. It was amazing for that event. And up until that point, I'd never seen surfing that good. Gary Elkerton was phenomenal.
Wow.
I think I came third. Maybe Simon Law got second. But we all kind of met each other there, and, we bonded together, and we've had friendships this whole time because some of us had never really travelled, and, we're leaving to go to the world titles, and I'm at the airport and I'm drinking a Foster's and smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
That's how raw it was.
Yeah.
We had all this journey to go to realize what it was to be a professional athlete. We were just good surfers making our way at that time.
And it was talent. It wasn't because you guys were working. I mean, I don't know. I guess this is a question. Was it raw talent that got you guys there?
At that point, it was raw talent and youth.
Yeah.
And then, through time, you realize you can't be the best unless you really work on it. That took a little while for me to learn, but yeah, I felt I got there.
How many other guys were smoking?
There was a couple. Okay. Yeah, there was probably. It was a minority, but there was a couple.
Okay, so you guys weren't treating yourself as an athlete.
Depends on what depends on what they were smoking.
That too, yeah. Well, it's legal here in California now, so.
Yeah. But, there was always, obviously, in surfing circles, there's always a relaxation joint going around. I wasn't so much of a dope smoker, but unfortunately, I grew up and I got addicted to cigarettes very early in my life. My dad was a chain smoker. That's how he died. You would think that would have made me not smoke, but I got a fair inkling I was addicted from about the time I was 8.
Wow.
So, yeah, I was into it early, like real early. It took me a long time to give those horrible things away.
I guess we'll fast forward. How did you quit smoking, and how hard was it? And then
it was really hard. I reckon I quit every year for about 20 years. And New Year's resolution, I'm giving it up, and I'd go for X amount of months, and then the thing that broke me a lot of time was, and this is probably similar for a lot of guys, I'd head off to Indo, and I'd go to a boat trip, and I'd get that waft of that gudang gurung smell coming across the water. I'd go buy myself some gudangs, and I think, it's a clove cigarette. It doesn't do you any harm,
Yeah.
And then the next thing I know, I'd be lining up to buy myself a pack of the ciggies. It was I'd come undone every year, but it wasn't until I sort of I read a couple of books, and then I think what it was I just basically had to tell myself that they're poison, and they're not a treat, and I'm not going back to it, and it's just the way it is. It's over. And it wasn't until I really had that hard chat with myself that I was able to do it properly.
Were you smoking like 2 cigarettes a day, or were you smoking 2 packs a day? Like, what was your?
No, I was probably half a pack a day, and then Sundays might have been a pack. But it was, it was not good. It was like you wake up in the morning, and that's what first thing you're looking for.
Yes,
then 100%. You spend all that time trying to clear your lungs in between.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, how big? Like going to Hawaii and smoking. How's that? Like, that's got to be scary.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's stupid, but I was doing it.
I know. Crazy.
I'd be hiding out. Like, I used to hide out behind competition areas or wherever I could get away, to just get that little bit of a nicotine hit. Like that drug is a bad drug. It had me hooked, line, and sinker for so many years, and I just had to do my best to work around it.
That's awesome. I'm glad you did quit smoking. That's rad.
Yeah, it took a while, but so am I. I'm stoked.
Yeah, and then one more question. Like, I mean, when you're probably drinking too, the smoking comes easier. By the way,
absolutely. Yeah, then it's all part of it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now you're in the 80s. And you did good at where was that, at Huntington Beach? You didn't say in California. Where was the contest?
The amateur contest was spread out. It was
okay.
Ventura,
Yeah.
Oceanside, and Huntington. So 3 different legs, and they had the finals at Huntington. Yeah, so I did terribly in that, but then I did really well at the Huntington event. I think I won the trials that year, got through to the main event, won my first heat, and then surfed against Richard Cram, I lost on a split decision. Straight after that, I got approached by a chain of surf shops to be sponsored by them, and I really didn't know what sponsorship was properly then, but they ended up paying me a little bit of money, and I rode for Newport Surf Company. And then through the Newport Surf Company, I ended up getting sponsored by Maui and Sons.
Wow, yeah.
Ended up on the team with Ted Robinson and Laird Hamilton and Buzzy and Mark Bellinger. And it was classic. I was like a fish out of water, I was just like this weird little smoking Aussie that was with this loud and bright volleyball, models. It was weird. It was like I felt like a square peg in a round hole. But they were great guys. They really looked after me. Jeff Yokoyama and Rick Reitfeld were just lovely to me. Put me up. Yeah, mate, I couldn't say a bad word about those guys.
What was your first thought of traveling when you showed up in America? Like, what was going on in your head?
I was blown away. I was blown away. America is obviously, for a kid from Australia who hadn't really been anywhere proper, it was larger than life. Everything was big. Everything was, it was not daunting, but it was just exciting. Yeah, It was kind of exciting to see it and being part of it. I spent a lot of time in California over the years following that.
Yeah.
Due to sponsorship, commitments, or just a relationship or events, trips, shaping, with Rusty, all of that stuff.
So OP Pro, was that in '84? Was that your first pro event?
Yeah, I'm trying to think whether I did. No, that, to be honest, that wasn't 84. I think it was 85.
Oh, 85, okay.
Because, I did the world amateur titles, and then I stayed on after that.
Yep.
And waited for the tour to come back around to California. Went down to Mexico, went up with the Palmers to Central California.
Okay.
And waited for it to come around. So that's pretty much where it all started. Yeah, that Huntington event. And then it was basically about trying to get as much money as I could to get to the next event, try to win heats and keep the dream alive, really.
But a lot of other pros were doing the same thing, right? So you were living that life.
There was a few of us that were, there were some guys that walked into some decent sponsorship depending on, their image or how good they actually were.
Yeah.
And then there was a few battlers. I'd say I was in the battler crew, and we just did whatever we could to get there, whether it was borrow money off your girlfriend or, working in between or just trying to win heats was the biggest thing. Just keep winning.
Okay. What did you think of Central California after being in Southern California, especially with Dave Palmer?
I loved it. I loved it. Yeah. To me, like, the whole of America could have been Southern California when I was first there.
Right.
I was staying in Newport. I think I stayed a little while with Preston Murray, who put me up on his couch for a little while. But to me, the whole of California was Southern California. And when I got up to the Central Coast, it sort of opened up my eyes that, there's farmland and there's cows and there's seaweed and there's, reefs and
heavier water.
It was beautiful. But in saying that, I really like South as well. Like, I really loved that whole area around San Diego and the cliffs and the reefs and ducking over into Mexico. All of that stuff for me was just phenomenal.
Were you writing back home to your mom or calling her, and what was she saying? Or your family?
Well, I did that to my girlfriend at first.
Okay.
I've had a very, very long relationship with the one girl.
Okay.
And, we've been through a lot together, and it's a really special relationship. But, I used to write her letters. And, that's the thing that a lot of the young kids can't get their head around, is the fact that we didn't have a mobile phone. There was no internet. You had to write letters, or you had to make a call and speak to someone in broken English overseas and try to figure out how you could rent their back shed or something. And, you had proper airline tickets that were made out of paper.
Yeah.
There was a weird time, and everything was quite difficult. It was like, it really took a lot of effort to get visas and plane tickets and itineraries and, contact. So I'd send letters overseas to arrive at the post office, or my wife would, or girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of – she saved up. She came across to California, worked for Newport Surf Company for a while.
Oh, cool.
Earned some money so she could then come and meet me at the next spot. And, it was a bit of that and me staying with the lads, like traveling a lot with bunking in with the boys and just trying to do it as cheap as possible.
Wow. So it's a completely different world than a lot of these kids coming up today. Just
absolutely. And, your reality is your reality. So
yeah.
You make the best of any given situation, I suppose. But it's vastly different to what it was. It's it was like we're backpackers. We're just backpackers with a bunch of surfboards just trying to make it happen.
Which also, comes to mind, how was traveling with boards back then compared to today?
Well, we, it's different now. You see the pro surfers and they got like 30 boards.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Like I see Geordie sometimes. I'm just like, man, how do you even figure out what to ride? But yeah, we used to travel with 4 boards.
Wow.
We'd have, because we do a long leg, we'd be doing a leg that could potentially take us through America, down to the deep, darkest of South Africa at Cape Town, and back up to Durban, and then on to Europe. So you were gone a long time. And because it was cheaper to buy a one-way around the world sort of ticket, that was how we do it. We'd just put all these little bits and pieces together and jigsaw puzzle it for the cheapest price. So we'd take a 6.8. From memory, I'd have about a 6.8. If it got big, I'd have a 6-bore, which is sort of like a step-up gun, and then I'd have 2 shortboards, and that was it. And glassed-in fins. Yeah. So I was like, you had to know a good ding repairer. Yeah. Because often you'd turn up to somewhere and, you'd be exchanging whatever to try and get your boards fixed in the first 6 hours that you were there. Because, you'd arrive somewhere completely jet lagged and you'd have to compete virtually the next day. Wow. And that was week in, week out. So it was pretty intense. It was, it wasn't much time in between. You were often dealing with, you're dealing with a lot of jet lag.
Yeah. So do you have any good stories about like traveling, being somewhere stuck? I mean, I don't know. Any stories?
Yeah, I had one that I found pretty funny. I mean, there's a lot of them.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I think there's 2 that stick out to me the most, and they're both on the plane.
Okay, let's hear it.
As opposed to being in the car. One was to Natividad Island, which I know is not a big trip. Yeah. But in the 80s, that was pretty raw. And yes. The first initial flight I did, I think we sculled back a whole heap of Coronas just because we were that scared when we seen the size of the plane. We had a big Mexican pilot, and we had this tiny little plane where somehow we fit a bunch of stuff in, and it had a single bench seat that ran down the side that looked out sideways of these little portals, the windows. Yeah. And when it took off, we all had to lean on top of each other up the front of the plane. So there's no seatbelts, there's nothing, So we're all leaning over the top of each other, going, and it takes off. So that was the first trip. There was another trip I did a couple of years later to Natividad. I did a trip, and I think the magazine article was in Surfing or Surfer. It was, I was stoked. I was getting in a magazine.
Heck yeah.
We went down there and we had it was okay. It was pretty good waves and some funny things. And, typically you don't think about these things, but you get on the program on the last night, the tequila's flowing. Yep. You're eating like lobster, fresh caught lobster. And I don't know whether it was the tequila or the food or both, but the next day, I don't think I've ever been as sick of my life. Like I thought I was going to die. And all I wanted to do was, I knew I couldn't go home. I just had to get back to California. Yeah. I just had to get back to a motel room or somewhere in California. So I'm dying and I get on this little plane and I have to go to the toilet, right? So it's coming out both ends. It's coming out the top end and it's coming out the bottom end. I'm as sick as anyone could be, sweating. I'm dying. I lock myself in this toilet and they stop at I can't remember the name of the island. There's another island where they do a stopover and they bring on people. So there's people getting on the plane. They've got chickens. There's dogs. There's people everywhere. They're banging on this toilet door and they're trying to get in. And I've got it locked. And I remember I'm trying not to poo my pants, and I'm throwing up in this toilet, but it's one of those pump action toilets.
Yeah.
So the little metal flaps going up and down, and I'm getting this waft of everything that's in this toilet. It was horrendous. I was dying. I just thought someone break the door down and just kill me. So anyway, that's one. The other story that comes to mind was we didn't have a flight from, I think it was South Africa to Reunion Island. So the WSL or the ASP at the time chartered a flight for all of us. Mm-hmm. So all the judges, the officials, all the surfers. And it took forever for this plane to come. So we got stranded in the airport. So what's one to do? We all started going to the bar. So it was probably about 30 or 40 of us that just got on the juice, and we got on this plane. And it was like a scene out of Flying High. The whole plane went crazy. We started a food fight.
Oh, that's funny.
Guys were running down the aisle of the plane, stealing the captain's hat, putting it on their head. There's food just flying. The stewardesses had to run and lock themselves in the toilets to get away from the madness on the plane. But it was chaotic. There was all sorts of stuff going on. So, I mean, they're just two quick ones that come to mind. But there's a lot of hilarious stories. There's and a lot of dangerous stuff happened, and just a lot of camaraderie between the boys and girls. It was good times.
So on that airplane trip, does that bring you guys closer? All the different pros or whoever else was on there, or does that make sense? So you guys bonded, kind of like having fun.
Yeah, I think there was there were certain groups that maybe didn't like each other as much. And, it was always the Aussies versus the Americans and all that sort of stuff. But generally speaking, I believe we all got along quite well. Like, we were fierce competitors in the water, like super fierce. But out of the water, I think there was a common bond between all of us, and I think that carries through. Even to today, we run into each other somewhere. It's like we feel like we're old friends. Yeah.
No rivalries though, like between, I don't know, maybe the top guys versus the guys that are really hustling to make it happen.
Yeah, we definitely, like as I was saying, I kind of felt like we were a little bit more like battlers as opposed to, the guys at the top were probably Oki, Potter, Curran, Tom Carroll. Those guys were the sort of legends, and they were at the top. The rest of us were fighting for a spot, so it was quite aggressive. I remember me and Potts, we had some really aggressive run-ins. We never actually punched each other in the head, but it was, we had heats where we were spitting at each other and cussing each other and paddling into each other, and it would get pretty fierce. And there was a lot of quiet punch-outs in the competitors' tents. There's a few guys knuckling on, and there was some punches thrown, and there was it got pretty feisty. There was a lot of before they brought in probably a more stricter sort of priority rules. Even with priority, like, guys
with the buoy,
use that to their advantage.
Okay. So with the buoy coming on, that changed things? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it did, but it also in some ways made it worse too, because people would use that priority buoy to their advantage, by standing there with their board in shallow water waiting for someone to take a wave, especially if the waves were like inconsistent and 1 foot in France or something. They'd stand there waiting to take your wave if you took it. Okay. It got pretty ugly in some cases.
All right. In your career, you kind of watched a generation leaving and then had the new generation you were kind of in between generations, right? Does that make sense? Well, the Mark Richards were getting out. The Sean Thompsons were kind of towards the end of their career.
Yeah. So when I first started, I surfed, a couple of heats with Sean and Mark Richards and those guys. And then they moved out right as I came in, Simon Anderson. They were all getting off. So our era was pretty short-lived, really, because then we had the whole momentum group. Right. So say we came on in 85, by 90, that's when all of those kids came out of California.
Yeah.
So during my era, it was Mike Lambrisi,
Yep.
Jim Hogan, Charlie Coon, Chris Frohoff, Buddy Lamas,
Yeah.
legendary guys. Gerlach, obviously,
Yep.
Parson. And then you had the new breed, the momentum breed that came in. And really that was a turning point in pro surfing, because I felt that they changed the format to have the back 16 and the back 14 and the top 16. And really when they did the top 30 and those kids all came in, you were either up the upper end and ability to compete with them, or you were out within the year. And it really cleaned out a lot of the dead wood, so to speak, because those kids came and made a big difference.
Yeah, their surfing was, I don't know, did the judging change? What do you think? Or do you think they were just,
I think
changed?
so. I think it always morphs in certain ways depending on what becomes popular at a given time.
Okay.
And it kind of can maneuver that way. But I think no matter how you look at it, like if you've been watching someone and judging them for 6 years, say, you subconsciously get bored of it. So when something fresh comes along and it's all in the media and it's hyped and it's got a lot of pizzazz about it, even if it's not tangible, it's there, and that gets judged. It just happens. And one surfing that was good 4 years ago may not be deemed to be good anymore, because that pizzazz has come through and changed the persona of what competitive surfing should look like.
So how'd that feel for you?
I was able to hang in there. I think my surfing was progressive enough. I suppose you could use that.
Okay.
I had the ability to do airs, not well, but I could do them.
Yeah.
I could do certain tricks, and I think my surfing was progressive enough to stay with them.
Yeah.
Not necessarily beat them all, but be competitive.
Okay. And some of the other competitors weren't able to do so, do you think?
No, I think guys that have been there for a while that were just, and maybe it was a natural attrition as well that you just fade out through time.
Yep.
It's not what you envision anymore. Your hunger's not in it. You're not surfing to the level you need to. That just naturally happens to people. And that time was pretty crucial for me too, because that's when I was just competitively hitting my straps. So in 90 and 91, that's when I challenged for a world title. And I was leading the ratings on both those years.
Yeah.
Right up till about halfway through the year. And it was tricky because some of the events on tour, given that if the sponsor put in more money, they were worth more points. They weren't necessarily in the best waves. Like you'd have Japan as an example. That was a very rich event. Every now and then it'd be okay, but 9 times out of 10, the waves are pretty crappy. And, if you did badly there, it had a massive impact on your yearly ratings.
Yeah.
And that happened to me pretty much 2 years in a row. And, some of it was probably self-imposed and some of it was just bad luck.
Okay, so was the money because it brought the crowds, and that's why you guys were surfing Japan and probably Huntington Beach back then?
I think the money, it just meant more prize money, and part of that maybe with the association was they gave it more status.
Yeah.
And giving it more status meant it was more important on the points scoring for us.
Okay.
For the tally, which made a huge amount of pressure at that time of year for all the surfers. And you could either win or lose your race to the title at that one event. Okay.
How many events were you guys doing? Let's say 1990, 91.
We were doing at least probably, I don't know, I got to think.
30, 25?
Well, 30 if you're counting all the peripheral ones as well.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly how many they counted as an averaging.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of events.
Wow. Versus today when they're doing 7 or 8 events, how do you feel you would have did? Better? Worse? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's a different world, but
it is a different world. I think I would have done better now. Yeah, I think in this era, because I think there's more tools available. If you look at our era, and I'm not sure if it was maybe the same when Rabbit and Sean and those guys came through their era.
Yeah.
But there was, during our period, there was huge casualties.
Mm.
There was a lot of kids that went wayward, and there was a lot of vultures, around the tour. There was, everywhere you went was another party, just in a different culture or a different language.
Mm-hmm.
But it was similar. There was always things on offer if you attempted. And, you're young and you're away from your family and friends, and, you're gullible in some cases. And a lot of these young kids fell into that trap and didn't have either the family backing or the mentors or the right people around them to navigate, or the skills to navigate those gnarly situations. And I feel like I lost a lot of friends from that on tour. Like, there were people that were really damaged through that time.
Okay.
What should have been and could have been an amazing time in their lives ended up being pretty damaging.
Okay. So what do you mean vultures? Okay, well, here's how I envision the pro tour. And I would go watch the OP Pro or watch the Stubbies here in California. It looked like a big rock concert after. Like, you guys were rock stars.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm assuming you guys were treated that way at 9:00 at night on a Friday during the OP Pro or something.
Yeah. Everywhere you went, because you were, I suppose, on the surfing tour, it's like this bubble that travels around the world to all these different locations. Everyone's stoked on it. They want to be part of it. There's an incredible vibe. There's lots of girls. There's lots of parties. There's lots of sponsors looking after you. And, even when you're up to no good, they're still looking after you.
Yeah.
So you've got this thing that just travels around the world in this state of madness in a way. It's pretty crazy. And some guys navigated it well and were very healthy, and some of the Christian boys as well that didn't go to that side, but some others just got lost in it, and it was tricky to navigate for a lot of young crew. But it was, in saying that, also it was a lot of fun. So if you got through it, okay, you can look back on it and have some really cherished memories of all of that.
Pro surfing today versus back then, but coaching and stuff, do you think that's a good thing? How the pro surfers are brought up so early in age today? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes and no. I feel that if you coach too much from a young age, and particularly into a certain way, the thing with coaching is, I don't feel it's so much coaching to be an individual talent, to have something unique. I feel that it's coaching for a sport, and I feel that I don't really feel surfing is a sport. And that's a big call, but even though I did it and I did it professionally, I just feel, for me, it's an expression. It is an art form. It's a channel of energy. It's a connecting with nature. It's escapism. It's a dance. It's being in flow with the wave. Now, if you can take all of that into a competitive environment and make it work, that's great. But I feel with coaching, the vast majority of coaching that I've seen is trying to get the kids to surf a certain ways so they fit a system where they can be competitive successfully. Yeah. Now, if you do that and everyone's doing the same thing, it homogenizes the way people surf, and it homogenizes the convention that it's in. Mm-hmm. If you step outside of the convention, and, think back to Shane or whoever else that was off on their own tangent, it's often said that they're doing the wrong thing, but they're not really.
They're He's right.
They're just not fitting that convention.
Yeah.
And I feel that at the moment, even though the surfing is in cases brilliant to watch, I feel that the lead up to that from a lot of these kids that are getting coached now is going down a pretty one-way route. Now, I could be wrong. I could be completely off the cards with that. I think the one good thing about coaching, from what I've seen, is that most of the coaches have good intentions. Yeah. They're good people. They come from a background of experience. They want to give back to the sport that they've ever had success in or they've enjoyed. And I feel that it's a a family-friendly thing. There's a good little community in around. Like, there's a lot of kids coaching. They're bouncing off each other, and it's good social interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all of that's good, but I just think from a purely technical point of view, I think it might tend to take out a bit of the individualism and uniqueness of people surfing,
Yeah, 100%.
just because you're getting steered down a particular path.
Yeah, 100%. I kind of agree with you. But pro surfing's bigger than ever, and more people are enjoying that.
Yeah, and it's healthy. It
is healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a healthy pastime. You've got incredible role models like Slater. I think it's in a good place. Apart from, I just feel it's a little vanilla at the moment.
What about
I miss the rivalries. I miss
that too. Yeah.
The rawness. It feels to me a bit constructed and a bit forced positive, if you will.
Okay.
It feels like
yeah.
Sometimes it is shitty, and sometimes guys do surf a wave shitty, and he shouldn't have got that score. It's
okay.
A little bit of that, a little bit of rawness would, I think, be much appreciated. So,
that's missed today for me personally, as being a surf fan. The rivalries and stuff. I think you guys had it. I don't see it today. As a bummer.
Yeah, I love that stuff. So,
and I think part of it, in my opinion, is the camera's always pointing at these guys, or you didn't have the camera always at your face.
That's right. You, those cell phones, there's cameras, it's everything's captured nowadays.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about you surfing today. How much are you surfing?
A bit. A little bit on and off. I mean, I just turned 60 the other week, so that's a major milestone for anyone, I think.
Okay.
So I've kind of got another lease of life. I've just ordered a brand new shortboard. I surf as much as possible. Like, if the waves are on, I'm pretty much out there.
Okay.
I think it is getting to that stage now that, sometimes the bigger swells, it's not so much pick and choosing, but, there was a day a few years ago where I couldn't bring myself to jump off the rocks. I just couldn't do it. And it broke me. Seriously, it broke me.
Really?
It was one of just ruined me. That day, it was huge. Like, it was really big.
Yeah.
It was as big as our local beach gets. It was, it was 15 to 20 foot, I reckon. It was,
that's huge.
and the only way you can get out is you have to jump off this platform. And all of us local guys know that platform. And anytime there's a particular swell direction and it's big, we lose sleep the night before because we know we've got to walk out those rocks, and we've got to somehow time it where we don't get dragged into what we call the death zone. So I just had this day where I could not. I had the board in the car. I had like a 9-foot board in the car. I was ready. To go, but I just could not bring myself to jump off the rocks. And I went back and forth all day, checking that spot, going to the headland down south, looking. And I went mad. And the thing was, the next day it dropped to about 10 foot. It was still really big.
Solid.
And this swell lasted about 4 days. It was beautiful. Like, we got so many good barrels, but I was able to do it the next day, and I regained a little bit of self-pride, I think. But that day before really was that time where the first time pretty much on home soil where I've kind of looked at it and went, I don't think I can do this. And that was a big point in my life, really, to know that it's okay to get older and to realise that there's some things you just got to look after yourself and not quite go there.
So let's ask a couple questions on that. First off, you're getting older, but you had nothing to prove either. You're at an age where right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's kind of, in the end, that's what you have to tell yourself. You've done it, you've been there. You don't have anything to prove to anyone or to yourself, and I think once you can accept that and swallow that back, then it's okay.
Okay.
And I think that day definitely did that to me, and it was nice in a way. It was nice to go, okay, I go when I feel it's right.
How many swells have you paddled out where you were uncomfortable?
There's a few. It's it's all of us know this spot locally. It's one of those ones where you can't paddle out when it gets to a certain size. It just becomes too difficult. So we all jump. There's 2 spots where you jump, and you got to choose, depending on the swell direction or the tide, which part you're going to go off. But there's a lot of crevices and spots where you can come unglued where the foam's coming across, and until that you get a long enough lull for that to dissipate and you can kind of scurry across the rocks. It's all about timing. It's all about patience. Okay. And, you got to be careful not to be too excited or you just got to get it right. And it's we all live with it, but it's and we all come unglued at some stage.
Yeah, I bet.
Seen a lot of people skittled out there, that's for sure. And, I had a really bad accident not far from there many years ago. So there's it.
You want to talk about that?
Happy to.
Sure.
We're
How was that? You got a head injury, right?
Yeah, I completely. I opened my scalp up, and I broke my neck and I broke my spine in 4 spots as well.
Oh shit!
So I was in a body brace for about 3.5 months.
Wow.
It was a bad one. I thought I was going to die that day. It was it rattled me. It really rattled me.
Anything else on that? I mean, you were surfing, obviously, right? And there was a rock you hit?
Yeah, I was surfing with my son. We got up on a Sunday morning. We kind of knew the conditions were not bad for that spot.
Okay, how's your son at this time?
Off rocks. He was 16 at the time, I think.
Okay.
17.
Okay.
Yeah, he was youngish.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of pumping, and it actually was pumping. It wasn't big, but it was just nice. And on a particular swell, it breaks along these boulders, and we call it off rocks, so it's right off the rocks. And there's a rock on the inside that you've got to be wary of. They call it the Matterhorn.
Yeah.
And it sort of sits there on the inside, and most of us know about it. But on this day, the swell was different, and I was out there. Bruce Raymond was out there, actually. Greg Webber, the shaper.
Oh, yeah.
Bunch of the local guys. And I went up to what they call lobster pots, which is kind of way on the inside. And it doesn't often break from lobbies all the way through, and it was this day, so that meant it was good.
Yeah.
So I went right up to lobbies, and I got myself on a set. I remember Bruce was sort of paddling to go for it. I said, Bruce, and called him off. And I went down the line, and I kind of didn't really realize where I was on the reef. And I went up and did a really long floater along the roof line of the wave to make the section, and then dropped down onto the flats, realized the wave was going to run off without me.
Yeah.
And thought I was close enough to deep water at the end of the reef.
Okay.
And I completely was nowhere near that. And I dove off like a pencil with my arms by my side head first. And I instantly went straight into the rock. Felt my body explode like a heat explosion. And yeah, it was just, I hit it with such impact that it just went all the way down through my head, my neck, and my spine it was like, got to describe it as like heat. Like it just felt like this massive heat.
Wow.
And then I tried not to pass out because I felt like I was going out underwater, and it just felt like I'd been crushed, like completely crushed. And I fought off passing out, and then when I got to the surface, my hands and my arms didn't quite work properly. It was all, it was all tingly and ginger and stuff, and the wind had been knocked out of me. And, I felt like my innards had kind of collapsed or something. And I reached up because I knew I'd hit my head really hard. I reached up to feel my head to see what had happened, and my hand went inside my head.
Oh.
So because I had a full skin flap flapping around. And then I seen the blood, and I knew I was fucked. Like I knew I couldn't move properly, and I was bleeding, and I was broken inside. So I kind of put one of my hands over my board, and I looked up to see who was at the car park because I couldn't see anyone near me in the lineup. They were all out the back. And I started to scream, and I looked up, and the first person I saw was my wife. So really ironic. She walked across with the dog to watch me and Billy surf, and she was talking to another lady
Okay.
on the stairs up into the car park from the beach. And she seen me, and I was pointing at my head, and she thought I was saying one more wave. So she
Yeah.
turned around with the dog to walk back up to the car park, and walked away. And then I started to scream. And one of the guys had finished a wave. He seen me. He came to me. Some other guys were paddling out, got to me. And then it was just a case of them getting me in. Yeah, they got me in, and they sort of semi-buried me in the sand to keep me straight. And
Yeah.
my wife came down. She came down straight away when she figured out it was me and I was injured. A guy put a towel on my head to stem the bleeding. She got in my line of vision and, just said, "You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay." And obviously I was bleeding a lot. And
Yeah.
I just told, if I'm honest, I just told her I loved her
Yeah.
and said I was sorry. It was a weird thing to say, but I always get teary when I talk about this because it was, fuck, man, I thought I was going to die. I actually was that broken, and I've never been that broken. I actually thought I was going to die there, and I just had to tell her.
Wow, that's heavy.
So anyway, it was a tricky moment. Long story. I was on the beach for a while. They gave me morphine, and they got me into the spinal board and secured me on the spinal board. The ambulance came, gave me morphine. The helicopter came. I think my wife organised the helicopter. Helicopter came. The doctor checked me, and because I could move my toes and my fingers, he thought just take him to the local hospital. And the ambulance was saying, no, take him in the helicopter to the spinal unit. And he's going, no, I think he'll be okay. And it was really weird. He was a real dick, this guy. He had a real attitude, and the ambulance guys were really angry at him, and they started to argue with him in the car park. I was in the back of the ambulance by this stage, and I was laying there, couldn't move. Obviously, had the neck on and everything, and was getting drugged. And in the end, I just said, fuck, guys, I don't care where you take me. Just fucking take me somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, so the helicopter took off. They took me in the ambulance to the hospital. And I get to the hospital, and the nurse shoves her finger in my bum to see if my sphincter works. And then they scanned me, and they just went, "Oh, he's fucked. We're going to take him to the spinal unit." So then they had to take me all the way through city traffic to the place the helicopter should have taken me. Anyway, I was in the spinal unit for a week or so, and met a lot of guys that would never walk again. Different accidents. They built me a custom body cast. A long story about my head, but they did all surgery on that the next day, and I got better. Yeah, I got better, and I worked my way back into surfing again. And
that's my question.
Every surf's a gift, mate. It's every surf is a good surf, no matter how shit house it is.
How hard was it to get back into surfing?
It was more like, it was kind of probably more mental than physical for me, because the lucky part about my injury was the head healed up okay. My hair grew back, which was something pretty special, even though it's grey.
Looks good.
Everything was, thanks, mate. Everything was straight. So it was like my neck, where my neck broke, and my ribs, and then the 4 or so fractures in my thoracic spine.
Okay.
Was all really straight the way it went down through, so there was no spinal cord damage.
Oh, good.
I was super lucky. That all just mended. Yeah, I was able to start swimming, and then I got onto like a paddle board and a mal, a big fish. The first thing I did, though, was I swam out to the location with some goggles on, and I just spent some time in and around the reef just processing what had happened, and just kind of checking it out and coming good in my mind.
Okay.
It was, because it was pretty. It felt pretty traumatic at the time. It was pretty wild, and I think it was even harder on my wife and my boy, because Billy got told out in the surf that I'd had a bad accident, so he made his way in, and he was holding my hand while I was laying there in the sand, and I think for him it was really tough.
Yeah.
Because he thought I was going to die. And my wife, obviously was rattled by it because she had to take control. And
Yeah.
so often they say that in those situations, the first responders or the people that are there can suffer a lot of trauma from that. So, but yeah, it's definitely, it's made my wife and myself closer than we probably ever were.
Oh, cool.
And it's just, it was in a way, is a beautiful experience, even though it was really heavy at the time.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, yeah, I can see that. Like,
Yeah.
You look at life probably a lot different now, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things, it's you get caught up, obviously.
Yep.
We all work.
We all do.
We all got to get by and, pay the rent and do what we got to do. But if you really strip it down, I think the big thing a lot of times with those sort of accidents where you feel like you come close is you realize that it really is the little things,
mm-hmm.
the simple things in life that are the most important. It's family, it's love, it's friends, and it's just watch the sun come up or just catch a wave or, it's just those things that matter.
Was there anything else that come close to you? Have you ever been in a traumatic situation before where you thought you were going to die?
Yes, the tsunami in G-Land in 94.
That's what I was going at, yeah.
Yeah, that's another one. So there's
you want to talk about that one?
Yeah.
Sure.
And then there was a few times when I was a kid, there was a couple of situations I had where I was locked in the back of a van with someone that was going to do me harm.
What?
That's a really pretty heavy little story, but I got out. But if you marry all these things together, it kind of like it's a feeling of being trapped. When I hit my head and I was underwater, and it was that moment, being caught in the tsunami, locked in the van. They're all ones where I don't doubt that I've got a bit of PTSD from these things.
Yeah, of course.
I often have nightmares where I feel like I'm a bit trapped. But it probably comes with the territory a bit. But yeah, G-Land was it was radical. It was my first trip there, and it was actually the first night of the trip.
Okay.
And that thing came motoring in at 2 a.m. No lights, no power, everyone asleep, and just mowed us down like no tomorrow.
I can't even imagine that.
And no, I couldn't either. It happened so fast and so strong and so violently for some of us, depending on where you were situated in the camp. Richie, Simon Law, those guys got obliterated and taken through the jungle. It came through my hut and pushed me through the back of my hut into a bush, and basically what happened was my hut crumbled on top of me, and my floor I was under my floor and under the weight of the whole hut, doubled up in my mattress inside a mosquito net. So I was like doubled up, like I was like a bloody crab in a net, and pinned underwater, pitch black. Like you don't even like. I didn't even. I had no concept. What the fuck was going on? Like I just had no idea. Like it was like, at first I woke and I was pinned. Didn't even realize underwater. First thought was I was pinned. Something's pinned me. Tiger. G-Land. First night in the jungle.
Yeah.
You go to sleep. You can hear all the monkeys and. So I'm in a dead sleep because we partied hard in Bali. We were really tired by the time we'd had our first day in G-Land, and a couple of beers, I was in bed, like out to it. And so, I woke up just like that, pinned in darkness, and I just instantly thought tiger. Yeah. And I kind of went straight into fight or flight mode and just started to survive. My body just took over, and I became like this wild, trapped animal trying to fight to survive with no idea what was happening. And then I realized I was underwater. You can't see anything. It's pitch black and you're pinned and I'm underwater. And then I'm holding my breath trying to and I don't know if the first part of it there was any little pockets of air or something. I don't know, and I don't actually know how long I was under. It could have been 30 seconds, it could have been 45 seconds, a minute. I don't know. All I know is that it went through the hut behind me where Monty Webber, the filmer, was in, Greg Webber's brother, and he was there to film. And it just went through, and he's standing, I think, in waist deep water in his hut. And he goes, fuck, what's going on? He comes outside and he's looking in the blackness, and all he can see is my hut underwater, and he's thinking I'm dead.
Yeah, of course.
So anyway, it goes over, it recedes back. Don't know how long it was. And then all we can hear is screaming, and I'm screaming as well. So I'm screaming for someone to get me out. Shane Herring's screaming in another hut. Bosco's screaming. Monty's screaming. Because no one knows what the hell happened.
Holy shit! You're in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere.
Oh
So we
my
just,
God.
we don't know, didn't know it was a tsunami. We just thought, what did the swell just pick up to 25 foot or something, and the tide, or we didn't know. And
how did you get out?
Monty came and helped me.
Okay, he got you out.
Yeah, we found the little hole, ripped through the mosquito net, crawled the way through, and got out. And at the time, Monty was he was losing it because he was in a state of shock, obviously.
Of course.
And he was just screaming at me to get out because another one was coming. Because basically what happens is I think it comes up and then sort of washes, has that washing effect.
Okay.
So he's thinking another one's coming. So he's fairly panicked. We're all screaming. We can hear, the other guys screaming. And that was pretty much what it was. Like everyone was screaming in the dark until we found our way up to where the tower is.
Yeah.
And we got in behind the tower and started to try and count heads and figure out where everyone was.
Yeah.
Richie and Simon Law found each other by screaming in the darkness and then sobbing and hugging and, just so happy to be alive. It was
holy shit.
It was wild. It was wild. And we found bits of surfboards and stuff everywhere that next morning. Like, some boards were found a mile down in the bay, another one around the corner, opposite direction, stuff up in trees, and just wild. Just the power of that thing was, in that area. I looked into it later on with National Geographic, and there's a survey online that you can find.
Okay.
I think it was something like 278 people died in that local area. We were just lucky in the sense that it was a mid-tide, and it hit us, I believe, sideways. It wasn't straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full.
And just our positioning in the bay, compared to, say, some fishermen down the other end or the village of Grudgigan or the little village around the corner. Yeah, and sometimes you don't even know how many lives are lost, obviously, because of their third world country.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was, it was beautiful to go back in 2018, 25 years later.
Yeah.
With my son, Billy, and we went to the ceremony and paid our respects to the local people and, got to revisit it. It was sort of kind of cathartic in a way, if you will.
Okay. So,
yeah, it was nice.
That's
really
heavy.
Nice. Beautiful. What a wave.
Yeah. Did you guys get the surf while you went there?
Yeah, we got some barrels.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And you being a goofy
Admittedly,
foot.
we're staying further back in a hut, that's for sure. Like we weren't I definitely wasn't staying anywhere near the shoreline.
Okay.
But it never leaves your mind, like it happened, it could happen again, like.
Yeah.
It's a 1 in a million, but.
Of course. That is crazy. And then anything else you want to talk about the other ones you were trapped, or you don't want to talk about those?
Nah,
Okay.
I won't. I don't need to go there. But
don't go there. Perfect.
All that stuff, has it gets welled up down inside, I suppose.
Well, you seem healthy and you're ripping harder than ever. Okay, so in your surfing today, you think you'll ever give it up? Do you love surfing still?
I will not give it up unless physically I have to. And then, I'll find a way to body surf or belly board or I'm gonna go as long as I can. I probably should take a page out of the book of Jerry Lopez and Tom Carroll and the likes, because though I'm not the hard drinking, smoking, fighting guy I used to be when I was younger, I still could probably do a bit better physically.
Yep. I think we all can, for sure. I can.
Yeah, definitely. But, generally speaking, I eat healthy and I take good care of myself, and I have a really I just have an attitude that I love it. I just
Actually, I have a question.
Continue that.
You being the young 25-year-old smoking, drinking surfer that had raw talent that was surfing contest, and now you being what are you, 60 now?
Yeah, just turned. Yeah,
just turned 60.
yeah.
At what point in life do you feel healthier? Do you feel healthier today or back then?
I think physically healthier. I was definitely physically healthier when you're young, because you can throw a lot at a young body and it doesn't stick. You ride through it just because you've got the energy levels.
Yep.
I think mentally, I feel really good mentally nowadays because I feel like, regardless, wisdom comes with age, and it's not even so much wisdom. It's just the reality is that for the most part, everything will be okay. You know, you will get there. You're going to have your ups and downs, and the realization that the little things, the simple things are what counts, and having gratitude for those small things. And, that comes with age, I think. And it takes a long time to figure yourself out and kind of get to the point where you're actually comfortable with the person you are. And, you might not be you're going to have obviously things wrong with you, and you're not going to be perfect, but it's just one of those things was I am who I am, and it's just take me for who I am, and I like me. It's I always remember that movie, Trains, Planes and Automobiles, and I just love John Candy when he said, I like me. My wife loves me, and then he's this big guy and he's got this hard life, but he just was happy with himself. And I just think that's if you can get to that point in your life, like that's kind of been pretty fit mentally. But the body, I just want to look after it now if I can.
Yeah, for sure. You're doing well. I think from your surfing.
Hanging in there at the moment. Touch wood. I'm on borrowed time. Another thing, I remember Simon Anderson said to me years ago, I did a trip with Simon. We're in the same surf team, and he was hot tuna. There was Bo Emerton, Richard Marsh, the coach now, myself, Simon.
Okay.
And we sailed down to the bottom islands in Fiji.
All right.
It was a rough trip, but I remember looking at Simon. I was thinking to myself, I wonder how old this bastard is. And so I said to Simon, Simon, mate, how old are you? And Simon's like really dry. He's a funny guy. He's got a dry sense of humour. He just looked at me. He said, Bob, it's like this. He said, I've reached the point in my life where I've stopped living and I've started to die. I thought that was pretty heavy, but it was kind of a pretty good description at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's good.
He shaped my boards for a long time. And, I went to his wedding when he married Sharon in Hawaii. Way back. He's an icon to me, that bloke.
Yeah, he's an icon to many.
Yeah.
Right on. Is there anything we're missing here?
I just feel like I've been really lucky to live the surfing life I have. I'm still in the industry. I'm working with O'Neill. I got the chance to compete in the World WSL Masters in 2018. So I'm a reigning world champion.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
I may take it to my grave. They may not have another one.
Okay. Actually, let's ask a couple more questions. Do you think they should bring back the Masters?
Yes.
Events? I think so too.
And
at least one a year.
I think they were talking about they were going to have it every couple of years, but I gather it's a financial thing. They need sponsors. But the thing I think they missed, in my mind, is you've got all these guys, right? They've got unique styles, they've got unique stories.
Yep.
But they've also got incredible footage from the archives of these guys.
Yeah.
I think if they're to do it, they need to not try to make it old guys in a young guys format competition style.
Mm-hmm.
They need to more, and that's fine to have a competition,
yes,
but
of course.
It's more so the focus of it should be on the stories, on the people, what they've experienced in their surfing life.
Yes.
And they could really put together something really authentic, special, and meaningful to these multi-generations of surfers. Because you think about, like, even surfing, it feels to me that there's so many older surfers that would love to hear all of those stories and even the younger guys to realize where it comes from. Authenticity is not bought. It's developed over time. And
100%.
I just think, when I see TF and Michael Ho and Simon Anderson and Terry Richardson and Fitzy. Like, I just think, man, those stories those guys have got, and they've got them.
Yeah.
They're just not being asked to tell them properly. And I think WSL sort of missed the boat on that. It's easy to do if they just want to do it.
Yep.
Maybe it's just too hard with everything that they've going on. But yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great because it's a great way for all of us to come back together. But it's also a good thing for a sport to honour its past. And the amount of money that's being made now, it's a nice way to honour the guys that made no real money out of it, but paved the way for what it is now. I just think it'd be nice to do that for those guys.
Be awesome. I think the history's being lost too, and they have a audience there to show the history of you guys.
Yeah, I think they pretty much have an obligation to it, to respect it, because it really,
I think so.
It was built off the foundations of those guys who started it, and then obviously we've all played our little part in bringing it to where it is now, and hopefully it'll go on to bigger and better things, and not even so much as even if it's a sport, but just as a spectacle and a lifestyle, and the ability to put kids in a good place.
With no magazines, I mean, let's go back to the history part, what you're saying, and the Masters could be an opportunity to show the history of you guys. I don't know if a lot of kids know who Mark Richards is anymore, or Rabbit, or you, or even Tom Carroll. You know what I mean? You ask a 15-year-old at the beach, Tom who? Tom Carroll? They might know like a few names, but
Yeah, I kind of I suppose I relate this a little bit to the spending a lot of time working in the surf industry as well.
Yep.
I naturally kind of went to that after I left the surfing tour.
Smart.
I've been in the game a long time, and it's always like, there's always this thing about targeting the youth.
Crazy.
And it's kind of a little bit short-sighted because one, they don't have the money, and it's that I just feel that when I go surfing, there is kids out there, but man, there's a lot of older guys in the water.
Okay, I'm telling you right now, and the local lineup here, and I surf 3 to 5 days a week. Everyone's between 30 and 40 and 60, kind of. Yeah. There are the Groms out there, and maybe they're hanging out at the pier or wherever. But there's way more adults, middle-aged adults.
I think they would really enjoy the stories and the and I just think there's learning, there's wisdom to be made from these guys, that have been through a lot and had real life experiences, to impart that knowledge, I suppose, to the next generation. And I'm sure the current guys would really respect that. It just needs to be showcased. But
of course,
maybe they'll do it through time. I'm sure they've probably got their hands full at the moment, just keeping it going in its current form and keeping it relevant for what it is. So,
Do you watch it? Do you watch it?
To watch it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes get frustrated with parts of it, but I feel again it's a bit vanilla, or it's a bit that side of it. It's a bit homogenized. But if you get someone like John on a wave, you cannot help but be just
mesmerized.
Mesmerized at what they're doing. With Felipe and John, it's incredible to watch. I love it. We love it. We all love watching it. So,
do you think the tour's an improvement from what you had?
Yeah, I do. I think there's one thing I do miss when I first started. One thing I really loved, that you had to get through a trials to get to the main event.
Yes, I love the trials.
Yeah, so that's kind of how we all qualified. We would go in trials at every event and build up our seeding points by getting into the main events, and then you would get the opportunity to go up against the big dogs. And one of the beautiful parts about the going through the trials was that you had to surf and learn these local breaks, whether it was the wave pool in Pennsylvania, or whether it was I know, which was weird, or landing in Cape Town and figuring out massive komaki, outer reefs. Like, you were thrown into these situations, but the real beauty of it was that you had these local surfers that had the opportunity, maybe only once, like a Davy Stolk in Cape Town, who is an indigenous, like, incredible surfer that shines in his local surf. And you'd have these guys that potentially could make it through and take on the world's best. And I just thought that was it was a great way of showcasing the local talent, getting the local community involved, and just opening up the door for everybody. I feel that sometimes competitive surfing can be a little bit closed. It's just for the elite.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of guys don't get the opportunity to be involved or show what they can do because they're not doing the tour full time.
Yep, I agree with you. And the trials were like fun to watch too.
Really fun.
You get to see the guy you surf next to every day competing against, you or Kern or whoever.
Oh, it's the best.
Yeah.
And you're rooting for him, and it's a really good vibe surrounds all of that. So that's one thing I kind of miss. But I think as a spectacle, it's incredibly well filmed. It's amazing, the way they break it down and go through it. I think they do a pretty good job of that. That's for sure.
Okay, and I don't want to talk shop, but what do you do for O'Neill?
I'm a marketing director for the region in Australia.
Yeah.
It's I've worked for the brand 22 years now.
Wow.
They did actually get rid of me for a little while. One of the global, I was working for the global team, and one of the global CEOs that came in punted me, which was pretty gnarly at the time. But and then I got into surf media. I with a few other guys, we bought White Horses, and White Horses is a beautiful quarterly print publication here in Australia.
Oh, cool.
About the ocean. That's still going.
Oh, right.
We bought that in Surfing Life magazine, but I soon realised that with digital taking such a strong root and print, sort of going off the ball, it was a really hard way to feed the family. So I retracted. I got out of Surfing Life. I'm just now still involved slightly with White Horses, which it's a little bit like our version of Surfers Journal. It's really beautiful.
Okay.
And then about 3 years after I got punted from or made redundant from O'Neill, the local general manager rang me and said, "Would you be interested in coming back?" So I've come back and just been deeply involved in the trenches of getting the business firing in the region. And what I love about O'Neill, it's at the end of the day, we're selling product, and the good thing about it is you're selling product to people that are getting in the ocean, are in touch with nature, and it's surfing. I really love the O'Neill story.
Yeah,
where it started. The authenticity of Jack. Obviously, it goes through a lot of peaks and troughs over the years, and does different things in different regions. But the simple premise of building a product to keep a surfer out in the water longer it's a beautiful thing, And Jack was an amazing fella.
He opened the door to basically the surfing. In most places, you need a wetsuit.
Yeah, he was an incredible guy. So it's
Did you ever get to meet him? Did you meet him?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I met him. I was with when I started sort of with the global stuff. I came across and I had a few drinks with Pat O'Neill, and we're going to dinner, and we're driving down the road, and he said, "Oh, there's my old man," and it was classic, mate. It was Santa Cruz, and we're in Pat's pretty spiffy sports car, and there's his dad with cut-off jeans, a pair of thongs, his beard and his eye patch, and he's riding down the road on his push bike. And Pat goes, "Yeah, I bet he's going to see his girlfriend." And so we pull over to the side of the road, and he introduces me, and Jack was pretty hard of hearing, but it was really cool to meet him. It was a really nice thing. But the best thing I've ever done with O'Neill, I believe, is I helped put together an art tour that honoured Jack's legacy. So basically what we did was we got any artist in any country around the world. We had Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, Japan, Holland, Europe, America. What we did was we put it out there that they could build whatever they want in Jack's likeness. So
cool.
I can show you one there.
Oh, that's rad. Yeah.
That was painted in Japan, but
cool.
Yeah, we did that, and then they submitted it online, and then we voted, and then they went into sort of like a finals where we did an exhibition in any region.
Oh, okay.
So we did exhibitions, Bali, Australia, Japan, South Africa, Holland, France, America. And then we finalised it in Santa Cruz, and Jack came with his family.
Okay.
And, they brought him in, and, he was getting on by that stage, but it was just beautiful to be able to tell him about, all this artwork that was done by a street kid in South Africa, or a young Japanese girl that doesn't even really know O'Neill but loves the image of him. And I think he really loved that. So that I felt, really good about that. So, great brand.
What happened at Oceanside? You told me a story a little bit. You kind of touched on it.
Oh, yeah.
Can you make it a shorter one? I'm sorry.
It was early on. It was either 85 or 86 stubbies.
Okay.
And, I bombed out in the contest, and I went out with another Australian surfer, Mark Grubb Hames. He's actually from Avalon. And another guy, Peter Lawson, who they used to call either the Night Owl or the Hooded Villain. And so I went out with Peter Lawson and Hamesy. We went out, we went partying. Cut a long story short, I think Pete was maybe fond on the girl that gave us a lift. She was giving us a lift back to where we were all staying. She'd been drinking. She got pulled over. They did a test on her. She didn't pass the test, so they took us all to the local police station.
Oh, okay.
Which from memory was in Oceanside or Vista. And so we ended up going back to the police station, and I'd never been in an American police car before. So they put the three of us in the back, the girl in the front, the one cop. So I'm looking through this mesh. It's got the big shotgun there. There's no handles on the back doors, and we're shut in there. And we get to the cop station. He takes her inside. About 20 minutes later, we're thinking, what's going on here? Have they forgotten we're actually in the car?
Yeah.
Then it's about half an hour. Then it's about 45 minutes. Then it's about an hour. And Pete Lawson's a South African bloke, right? And he's a character, but when he fires up, he fires up. And he's going, fuck, I can't believe they're doing this, bro. What the fuck? And we're starting to get angrier, and we get a bit claustrophobic, and we're busting for a piss.
Yeah.
And finally they come and they get us out, and they take us in, and they said, we're going to have to lock you up for the night because we didn't have our passports with us. They took out all our belongings. And while this is happening, Peter's arguing with them. I'm getting a bit feisty, and they lead us in, and they basically go, okay, well, stand up against the wall, hands up against the wall, legs spread, we're going to frisk you. And it actually really reminded me of that show Cops that I've seen in the future now. Bad boys.
Yeah.
So anyway, they're getting pretty toey with us, and we're getting a bit feisty, and Pete's getting pretty angry, my friend. So they go to get us up against the wall, and I've kind of gone, oh, fuck, this is so stupid. And I put my arms down and I lean back. The next thing I know, I'm in a sleeper hold.
Oh, shit.
The cop's got me in a sleeper hold. He chokes me out and then slams my head against the wall.
Jesus.
I'm unconscious. I've split my head open.
Oh, my God.
I don't even know this because I'm unconscious. So he throws me in this cell, and it was like when I woke up, I seen it. So I wake up, and there's a nurse patching my head, and they're taking my shoes off. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? And I'm pretty dazed and confused. And they're taking my shoes off because I gather that if you have your shoelaces and you go mad or something, you can, do yourself an injury.
Hurt yourself.
Hurt yourself. So they're taking their shoelaces off, or the shoes off, and she's patching my head. And they've got me in this rubberized type cell with a hole in the middle of the floor, and they lock me in there. And I can hear Peter, my mate, just losing his marbles, going, well, I'm going to get you guys for this. You've got to pay for this. We're going to sue you. And it's all manic. It's crazy. And I'm yelling out, it's okay, boys. I've come to, I've got a bandage on my head, but I'm all right. Anyway, this fucking night went on forever. And I I think what happened was in the end they said the boys could go from the holding bay if they want to. Grub went, yeah, I'm out of here. He took off. And Peter went, nah, I'm going to stay here until my mate Rob's out of the other cell. So anyway, he waits for me. He falls asleep. It goes into the morning. We try to leave. They won't let us leave because we still don't have our passports or any ID. So then we've got to contact we had to contact someone to come, go to our hotel, get our passports, get to the police station. They were on the verge of taking us to a detention centre out the back of Vista with all the Mexicans and stuff. And, like, in the holding bay, it was bad enough. It was like, the druggos and whoever else. But the long and short of it was I had to leave that whole situation and I had to go down and apologise to the contest organisers and the association for bringing it into disrepute.
Oh, my goodness.
So word had got out on the street and I'd done the wrong thing. So not only was I bandaged, feeling sorry for myself, but I had to go apologise to the ASP. So I was like, I wasn't in the good books.
Oh, my goodness. That's funny. I'm glad we talked that story because that's hilarious.
But Oceanside was wild, because you had Camp Pendleton Marine Base.
Right here, yeah.
The Marines would come into town and they'd be there for the jelly wrestling and, I suppose all hell would break loose. So that the last thing they were going to put up with is a bit of lip from a couple of little pissant Aussie surfers,
during the event. So anyhow, right on. Okay. Thank you so much. So much.
Yeah, no worries.
So everybody, this is Mike and Bob Bain. And thank you so much for joining us. And we're out of here. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Mike. Really appreciate it, mate. It was great to chat to you.
It was so fun. Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Please follow us on Instagram and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Give us 5 stars if you listen to us on Apple. And do me a favor and tell a friend that QuiverCast is back. I'd like to thank Glue Factory and Dave Hegstrom for the music. And I'll see you all in the lineup. Hey, you guys, Endless Summer box set. This thing is legit. It's authentic, numbered certificate in it. It has a 5-frame film strip from the original print. You will literally own a piece of history. It has a specially minted bronze medallion. Dude, that thing's sick. Okay, there's so much more here. Go to the show notes. There's a link on there. Go check this piece of history out. This thing's rad. Seriously. Smithsonian American History Museum has it. It took 4 years of research with 3.5 in production, all hand assembled. This thing's rad. So much to this awesome box set. Remastered DVD, sharper images than the original film, but dude, this thing's so sick. Link in the show notes.